Moral diversity is just true. There's a question about how much of it, how much diversity there is, because some things that look like moral differences might really not be moral differences. But it certainly is true that there are differences of opinion about moral questions, just like there are different opinions about scientific questions. And then moral relativism, I said all those nasty things about it just now, like, that it is open to attack from both sides, or there are other things to worry about. According to moral relativism, what Hitler did might have been okay, because if there were enough Nazis, then it was okay. Enough people were Nazis, and there's a problem about minorities, for that matter. If most people around here are Nazis, but some people around here are the people who Nazis victimize, what about their views? The moral relativist has to say they're wrong. But then if somebody comes along and tries to change society, that person is doing something wrong. Socrates was doing something wrong, according to the relativist, because the Greek values were correct. Teaching young people to be like horses and be obedient was the right thing to do, because that's what they thought. And Socrates was wrong to try to change their mind. But once he did change people's minds, it became right. That's moral relativism for you. Don't ask me. It's a crazy view. I'd rather be an anti-realist and think there is no morality, and think there's a morality, but it can change in these wacky ways. So moral relativism has a lot of problems, some of which I've already mentioned. There are some others.
Thank you.
Yep. More on question 2? Let's go to 3. Thompson.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Question. We listed the tools for an realist, but then you say that we should illustrate each of the ways it could be used in a moral argument, and that's basically the same format.
Well, I want you not to just name the tool, but to give me an example of it.
But the example is still, it applies to the
in a moral context.
right.
So look, here's an example of analogy that's not in a moral context. Your body's like a car; it needs proper fuel to function, right? That's an analogy, all right, but it's not a moral analogy. It has nothing to do with morality. My moral one has to be about what you want to do. So sometimes people will say, here's a tool, get the non-moral facts right. For example, it's a fact that the sun is farther away than the moon. Great, but that's not a fact that's relevant to some moral argument, at least not as far as I can tell. More on number 2? Number 3, Thompson.
It's just a general thing. When we're writing the Huffington Conference, I hope the Brad Pitt example.
Either one.
Okay.
Maybe that.
Okay.
Totally fine.
Just because that's the one we
Yeah, that's why I used it, because it's easier to remember, and
Yeah. Okay.
it's got more life to it.
So can we say like Huffington Conference example?
You can, or you can say the Brad Pitt example if you want to tell whatever you want. It's just your roommate doesn't know what the Brad Pitt example is, so you've got to explain it. But I don't care whether you explain it. You can come up with completely new pictures. It could be the Don Loeb example for all of your. Except that we have a rule about that. No lying.
What exactly is your,
Intermediate position?
yeah,
So Thompson says that you never have a moral obligation. Here's what we say: you never have a moral obligation. Let somebody else use your body, even if they need it to survive and they're a person, unless you've given them a right to use it, either directly or indirectly. Singer says that you ought to do the following. Anytime you can prevent something bad from happening without sacrificing something of equal moral worth, you ought to. And that means you ought to let somebody use your body. If letting them use your body is of lesser moral worth, right, then they're dying, for example. And it is in almost every case, right? I mean, it's bad to have somebody use your body without your permission, but it's even worse to die, right? So my position's in between, and it says that if you can prevent a great evil without making a great sacrifice, you ought to do it. Or if you can prevent a great evil with minimal sacrifice, by making a minimal sacrifice, you ought to do so. So if you find yourself in a hospital bed, and you only have to stay there for 9 minutes to keep the guy alive, and you don't do it, 9 minutes, bless you, 9 minutes just isn't much time. Right? That's not too much to ask of you. 9 years, that's a lot to ask. That's more than a minimal sacrifice. Now, I'm not saying that that's the extent of our moral obligation, but I'm saying that that's a principle we ought to be able to agree on. And if it's just a little sacrifice for the sake of preventing a really big evil, then we ought to do it. But Thompson thinks your right to control your body is very, very big. You know, it's yours, and you don't have to let anybody use it. You're an asshole if you don't, but you're not morally bad. But what is an asshole but somebody who's being morally bad? I mean, it's a part of your body, but the teacher makes jokes like that over and over again. What else? Yep.
So you say, when you talk about, like, Thompson talking about rape and birth control, and then you say supplement the argument with points made by me where they differ from
Right,
Thompson's.
so the part about burdens and probabilities that I talked about is my take on Thompson, but she doesn't use those words there.
Right.
She does say stuff like, this is crazy because it would mean a woman could never leave home without a reliable army or a hysterectomy, right? And I'm trying to figure out what she means by that. And I've said it's about burdens and probabilities. But that's me, not her. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be fair to the article to say that it's in there. It's not. Is it a good interpretation of the article? I thought it was, and she thought it was when I talked to her about it 20 years ago, but who knows, you know? I think so.
So you said it would be a burden to have to be whatever, but leave
What
the
I said
house.
was that the reason that that what she's doing when she argues for the birth control case, she's analogizing to the rape case. In the rape case, it's just not true that the woman didn't do anything, like, and played a role in her getting pregnant. She opened her door, and she wouldn't have been pregnant if she hadn't opened her door. But that doesn't mean it's her fault, or she's taken on some moral responsibility, or accepted the burden, or invited the fetus in, or anything like that. All she did was open her fucking door, right? It's not a big deal. Well, why? Because opening a door doesn't usually lead to children being dependent upon you for their lives. And to ask women never to open the doors would be to ask them to be, utter prisoners. That's a lot to ask.
And the same thing with the birth control, like what we talked
So
about
she'd
today.
argue,
Yeah.
but I think it's not asking people not to have sex until they're
Yeah.
ready to take care of the children, if they really are children, is not asking as much as asking women never to leave home, right? And the probability that you'll get pregnant even if you use ordinary birth control, is much higher than the probability of getting pregnant by opening your door and walking down the street. It's too high a probability, don't get me wrong. If it's more than one person, if anybody ever gets raped, that's too high a probability. It should be 0. But it's not a high probability that opening your door will have that result, and result in you being pregnant. Thank goodness. How high a probability it is a subject of some dispute, right? There are people here who will tell you that 1 in 4 women who attends college will be raped by the time she's out. I doubt that that's actually true. I think that you get that result only by expanding the definition of rape to ridiculous lengths. So if somebody touches you when you don't want to be touched, that's rape. Or if somebody has sex with you when you've had 2 beers, that's rape. I don't think it's rape. I don't even think it's wrong to have sex with somebody who's had 2 beers. People have had sex with me when I've had 2 beers, and I don't think it was wrong. I think it would be wrong for me to turn them in now. And if you want to say, yeah, but you're not a woman, then I'm going to accuse you of sexism, right? Because I think women need to be protected in a way men don't. I've seen this, A lot of times, there are hyper-feminist positions. I'm a feminist, if anything, right? If anybody is. I make comments about it in class pretty much every day, something or other. But sometimes a hyper-feminism can be akin to a form of sexism, if you ask me. Right? People say logic is a masculine tool of oppression of women. You know, what are they saying? Women can't reason? Like, that's an insult, if you ask me. Say women aren't logical, something like that. Or that, you know, if a man has 2 drinks and a woman has sex with him, she's not raping him, but if a woman has 2 drinks and a man has sex with her, he is raping her. That sounds pretty sexist to me. Once we were trying to hire somebody for the policy department, we had a candidate who was African American. And one of the deans, the associate deans, invited me into her office and said, you know, to talk about this. And she said to me, you'll want to make sure that he is introduced to other members of the African American community on campus. And I said, sure, if he wants to. And she said, oh, they want to. Like, that sounds like racism to me. She said, you know, you'll want to know like where you can get a haircut. I'm like, stop, it's getting worse, not better. It goes that way. Freaks me out. And I said, I hope this guy even comes to campus because I'm afraid he's going to get picked up by someplace like Harvard or something like that, and we're never going to get a chance to even interview him. And she said, I hear you resisting a little bit. There was this tone of accusation, like, are you some kind of a racist, Don, that you don't want this guy on campus? You know, when you're negative, people can tell. Guess what? He didn't come to campus. She's a nice person, actually. We should never pick on a dean because bad things happen to people when they get power sometimes.
So when you talk about how critics would approach Sean's evaluation, how she respond, what exactly?
So the points where criticism, I think, are most appropriate are the criticisms I've been developing the last couple of classes about how the birth control argument just doesn't really work because the burdens aren't as high and the probabilities aren't, the burdens aren't as high and the probabilities aren't as low in the case of birth control failure as in the case of rape. Where I say the analogy just doesn't really hold up. And where I talk about the people seeds not being, a plant not being the same thing as a person. And so she's given up the assumption that she made that got the article, the argument going here. The whole point of the argument was to show that even if it is a person, it's okay to kill it sometimes. And the other place had to do with the Henry Fonda / Brad Pitt example, where, Singer would criticize on the grounds that it's abhorrent to not stay hooked up for 9 months or even maybe 9 years. What's 9 years out of your life compared to the rest of the violinist's life? Maybe the violinist was going to live 10 years. 9 years of your life is less morally significant than 10 years of his. That seems like an extreme principle, but then anyway, that's Singer criticizing. And I'm criticizing too, where I say, what about this middle position that seems more plausible? Or where I say, don't worry about drawing lines. That's why you're taking the extreme view. You don't need to. Or, are you really taking the extreme view, Thompson? You say that you are, but then you say that it would be indecent not to stay hooked up for 9 minutes. But what is that but a kind of immorality? So 2 big nodes where criticism occurs. One is at the argument, when the argument starts to move into the area of birth control, and she knows that there's a problem there, but she's got answers, and I think her answers don't hold up. And then the other one is at the beginning when we're talking about what the right to life is. I think she's right that the right to life isn't a right to whatever you need to stay alive, and that it's not even a right not to be killed. And she shows that. But she also minimizes the right to life, I think, in ways that are inappropriate, like saying that it's never the right to use somebody else's body to survive. Well, gosh, if it's 9 minutes of somebody's life and they don't let you use their body for 9 minutes, it's pretty close to murder.
And you don't want to know what she would say in response to those?
Yeah, I always ask for, you give as many sides as you can. It's a little unfair here. I notice there's not much